Today's episode of Lions of Liberty is sponsored by ammo.com. And if you've ever wanted to save money purchasing ammunition while helping a libertarian cause, well, this is your lucky day because you see, ammo.com is run by fans of this program, fellow liberty lovers like yourself, and they want to give back to Lions of Liberty fans by offering $20 off any order over $200. Not only that, but they will redirect 1% of every sale to a pro-freedom organization such as the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the Institute of Justice, and many more. Not only can you save money, but you can rest well knowing you are supporting a great liberty cause. So head on over to ammo.com/Lions of Liberty, or just click the link conveniently located over at today's show notes at lionsofliberty.com/371.
You're much better off when you're visible than you are when you're quiet and certainly when you're apologetic. If you're apologetic and quiet, you're just easily dismissed.
Welcome to the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here's your host, your guide, your shining beacon of liberty, Mark Claire.
What's up, kitty cats, and welcome on back to the flagship, the original Lions of Liberty podcast. I've been doing this puppy for over 5 years. Can you believe that? And I certainly couldn't have kept doing this for so long without you guys, people actually listening to the show, sharing the show, talking about the ideas of liberty, but also without my compatriots in crime. Not in crime, actually. In liberty, my good friends Brian McWilliams and John Odermatt, who have their own shows on Lions of Liberty. Of course, you can hear Brian every single Wednesday with his weekly shot of comedy, culture, and liberty on Electric Liberty Land. You can also hear John with some amazing, compelling stories on his weekly look at the broken criminal justice system on Felony Friday, a very, very important show. So be sure to listen to all of the shows here on Lions of Liberty. And of course, for a very limited time, just through the end of October, we also have shows every Tuesday and every Thursday where we feature libertarian candidates across the country on Candidates of Liberty. If you are appreciative of all the work we do to right now bring you 5 shows per week, plus, we do a ton of content on Patreon, so head on over to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty to support the show and get even more content. With that being said, I'm very, very excited to bring you today's interview. It's a really, really interesting one. Let's get right to it. My guest today is a clinical professor of liberal studies at New York University, and he caused quite a stir on social media when he started an anti-PC Twitter account. We'll talk about that later on. He is also recently the author of the book Springtime for Snowflakes, Social Justice and Its Postmodern Parentage. I'm very, very pleased to welcome Professor Michael Rectenwald. Michael, are you ready to roar?
Yes, I am. Let's roar.
All right, excellent. And you've been roaring on your Twitter feed, so to speak, for a little while here, and it has definitely caused quite a stir, at least online anyway. And we'll get more into that stuff, as we get into things. But I kind of wanted to start by, talking about you've really gone through a political and philosophical transformation over the years. So I wanted to kind of start first by asking you, what was your political ideology like, say, 20 or so years ago? I don't want to date you wholly here, but whenever you first came into the university system and became a professor, what was your ideology at that time?
Yeah, I'd say 20 years ago, I was what I would call a radical Democrat. So a very activist, radical left Democrat. That is, supporter of the Democratic Party, but trying to push the party left. And so, for example, I used to appear on Joe Scarborough's show. It was called Scarborough Country. On MSNBC, probably 15 years ago.
Oh, yeah, I remember watching that show. Back when I still watched cable.
Okay, yeah, and I was the liberal pundit. Joe Scarborough was a total, decidedly more to the right then than he is now, or putatively is. It's real hard to say. So I was very critical of the Iraq War. I believed that and I probably still think, though, that Gore actually won the 2000 election. So after the 2000 election, I started a group called Citizens for Legitimate Government to protest Bush and what we thought was the coup and the stealing of the 2000 election with the help of the Supreme Court. And then, as I got further into academia and also disenchanted with Democrats, I started to transform into a Marxist by about 3 years ago, two and a half years ago. No, it started really 5 years before that. I was a left communist. That is, I accepted the premises of communism, but I rejected the consequences of the Bolshevik Revolution. And also, there was a tradition that fell in line with the same view. They were active in England and in Italy and some of them in Russia, but in the Soviet Union, but they were killed, most of them. I believed that socialist revolution in the hands of the actual working class would be establish a kind of democratic economic democracy, if you will. But then, so that's where I was up until this latest transformation, which I think is decisive in terms of where it's led me, and that is to libertarianism and the belief in the marketplace as an essential element, essential atmosphere, environment for individual liberty and for individual rights.
Wow, Michael, that is really an incredible pathway in so many ways. I think it's a pretty amazing journey that you took even before you got to where you are now, and really even to the point that you're actually calling yourself a libertarian at this point, where even a couple of years ago you were at the point of calling yourself a Marxist.
Right.
I'm kind of curious. I want to dig in a little bit more on why did you become disenchanted with the Democratic Party, and why did that lead you to just become even more farther to the left, to actually become to the point where actually identified as a Marxist? What caused that change, and why did you divert that direction instead of, say, I don't know, hopping over to the Republicans or something like that?
Interestingly, a decisive turning point was when Obama was the nominee. Actually, he was already the president-elect, and he decided to support Bush's bailout. The $700 trillion bailout of Wall Street and the banks with the 2008 financial crisis. I decided that his acceding to Bush's demands that we support this bailout was a sure sign that he was a complete fraud, and that he had no way did he have the interests of Main Street versus Wall Street at heart. I thought there's no clear sign that he's a fraud. And then I contacted a socialist party, a Trotskyite party in New York, because I had just started at NYU at this time, 2008, fall of 2008, and I started to associate with this Trotskyite party. That's the Socialist Equality Party. They have a website, the World Socialist website, and I tried to get admission into this party, but they wouldn't have me after all.
Why couldn't you join the party? Were you not left enough? Too left?
They said that my thinking was too inflected by postmodern theory.
Oh, interesting. Well, we'll get to that later.
Yeah, which is very ironic in light of recent events.
Right.
So, really, I don't think they quite understood where I was coming from on some things. I did research in the history of science, I argued things like, that social factors have a great deal to do with the direction of science and things like that. And they didn't like that. They were very much more positivistic in their outlook. And so, and I also claimed that, you could critique Darwin from various positions or from various points of view. And they didn't like that at all either. So they were very scientific, and also they just thought that they never had a university professor in their ranks before, and they couldn't imagine me being part of the party. So then I swung even further towards, this is when I swung towards left communism, which is not Trotskyite. It's a tradition that is critical of both of Trotsky and Stalin and Lenin and the whole Bolshevik crew, counting all of them. So that's basically how I got into that, and I started writing essays from that standpoint. I wrote a lot of essays from that standpoint and published them, and they were widely read.
So it's funny, you have a whole lot of works out there right now floating around that you've written in the past that really reflect a completely different view than the one you hold now just a few years later.
Right. That's right. I mean, I was very much, deeply immersed in Marxist economic theory as well as social theory. So there's different avenues of Marxism that I was into. One of them was, economic theory, and I have some papers on the economic crisis, and also I held that the problem was a crisis of capitalism and a crisis of profit, and that problem was only going to be exacerbated as the profit margin continued to decline because of the Marxist notion of the tendency, the law of the tendency of the rate of profit to decline. I mean, it's very complicated stuff, but I'm sure if you're a libertarian economically, then you understand these things. I think it's bogus now.
Have you gone back and read some of your stuff from that period, and like, does it make you cringe at all? Or I mean, have you even thought maybe about it? I think it'd be pretty interesting to see you write sort of a counter to one of your own papers from from that point of time.
I haven't really looked at that stuff for a while. I'm not ashamed of it because I was being earnest and sincere intellectually.
Sure.
And that's I would say from the standpoint of the present, definitely ideological blinkers on that I couldn't really see, and it wasn't until the left attacked me so viciously that they were peeled off of my eyes, and I was able to see things that I just couldn't see before. It's very interesting because Marxists claim that everybody else is under ideology, but the funny thing is they're under it worse than anybody.
So when did those cracks first start to emerge in Marxist ideology for you? Was it around the time you started to notice the problems with PC culture, or was there something else that started things for you?
It was the social justice left, and my chagrin that I was always critical as a Marxist of identity politics, and therefore of social justice.
Right.
But then, to my chagrin, with the election of Trump, there was a kind of circling of the wagons of leftists and liberals and everybody basically consolidating into this so-called resistance. And I noticed that even the communist left was basically adopting social justice views. And I found that to be very, very disheartening and, disturbing. And so I continued to critique it. And when I really came out as the anti-PC NYU prof, I couldn't believe the vitriol that I faced from every segment of the left, every milieu, and liberals, everybody.
What was it specifically? Was there a specific event that first kind of sparked this for you, or was it just kind of over time you saw these things propping up, things like trigger warnings and safe spaces and that sort of thing? Or was it just sort of a general culture you saw creeping in?
It was the culture creeping in, and then there were a couple tipping point events. One was the student at the University of Michigan who, when given a choice of his pronoun preference, plugged into his profile through the Wolverine system there. He plugged in His Majesty, and I simply posted a link to this article on Facebook and was roundly attacked by hundreds and hundreds of people and called a transphobe, a traitor, having committed discursive violence and all kinds of other lunacy claims. And that was the tipping point. I created the anti-PC NYU prof Twitter handle that very night and started to tweet. I put up it was anti-PC NYU prof. I used Nietzsche, a picture of Nietzsche as the avatar, and I promised to expose the viral identity politics and social justice excesses of the university system as an NYU professor. I was anonymous at this point. I think calling myself the deplorable NYU prof, anti-PC NYU prof, adopting an avatar of Nietzsche. I think the leftists thought this looks like this guy is a Trump supporter, and but I wasn't. I was. A lot of it was satire in terms of the avatar and the and sort of like there was sort of some satirical excesses to what I was saying. I did that on purpose just to get things, very roundly out there.
I mean, it does tie in very much to the Trump phenomenon, though, because I think in many ways, one of the biggest reasons for Trump's popularity, or his ability to capture those voters, is because he made people see them on his side. And one of the biggest issues where people just roundly see him as on their side is this anti-PC issue. No matter what the criticisms of Trump, and I have many, almost everyone, including the PC people, agree he's about as anti-PC as possible. So if that's a backlash to this movement in many ways has fueled Trump.
Yes, I think that was part of it. Definitely, it was that he had made many comments against PC, although he never really specified what was wrong with it. Secondly, I think that the Trump phenomenon represents the fallout of those people who are not others, that not non-subordinated others that the Democratic Party not only didn't cater to, but totally castigated, and basically shamed, shunned, denigrated, called, clinging to their Bibles and guns, called them flyover people, and then eventually called them a basket of deplorables. When Clinton called them a basket of deplorables, I sided with them, not so much Trump, but with them. In solidarity with deplorables, I called myself deplorable, not because I was supporting Trump so much, but because I felt that those people were the most maligned contingent in our culture.
I'm kind of curious, obviously you got a lot of attention for this anti-PC professor. I believe the actual handle is anti-PC NYU prof.
That's right.
And you started tweeting, and you were anonymous at first.
That's right.
Now, when you first did that, obviously you were anonymous for a reason, because you knew you were going to get a lot of backlash. Mm-hmm. Were you concerned at all, even from the start, about people finding out who you were? Obviously, you revealed yourself eventually, but I mean, was there a concern that this could cause trouble for you at the university? And it did, which we'll discuss in a bit.
Yeah, definitely. That's why I was anonymous at first. I thought, I really want to say these things. I really think these things. Although like I said, there was a sort of satirical excesses here and there, but I wanted to say the things that I was saying in essence, and I was nervous about doing it, and I was afraid, even though I was anonymous, that I would be discovered. And when the NYU reporter contacted me through direct message and said, "Are you really?" And they had somehow my tweets had insinuated themselves into her alerts, and she said, "Are you really an NYU professor?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, would you like to do an interview?" And I said, "Yes." I wasn't sure I'd go on the record, but after doing the interview, I thought, what I'm saying here actually needs to be said. So I'm going to say it, and somebody's got to say it. It might as well be me. I thought, I'll take the chance. And, went on the record with the interview and made further criticisms in that interview. One of the other things that really disturbed me was the institution in 2016 at NYU of a bias reporting hotline, which is a hotline that you're able to email or call, or in some places, report using an app on your phone, a bias incident or microaggression that you might see either in the classroom or anywhere else involving NYU people, even off campus. And so I thought this was a surveillance state that they were setting up. And I still think it's a really pernicious development. They have these bias hotlines that you can report anonymously to report your classmates or your professors for indiscretion.
It certainly feels creepy.
It's very creepy,
especially at a college campus where, in theory, it should be the place where the freest thought is encouraged.
Exactly.
That's where you're supposed to be developing your thoughts, and to develop your thoughts, you need to hear every possible point of view on things.
Yes, and it creates a chilling effect, which is the worst kind of effect to create in an environment in which rigorous debate is supposedly encouraged, in fact, and developed. So I thought it to be something very, very pernicious, and also, they asked me to put this on my syllabus, to devote like a few lines to this, and I refused. They didn't require it, but they were encouraging it, and I refused. And I think I told them I refused, and I got not too nice of a response about that. So when I did finally come out, I guess people weren't entirely surprised, but they were. And they were pretty much surprised. And the critiques I made, I thought, were perfectly legitimate. And still, I was making them from the left, as far as I understood it.
Right. So is that the interview that revealed your identity at that point in time?
Yes. There was even a picture of me in that in that interview.
So you came all the way out with that one. So how long was it before someone from the university contacted you and said, we got to talk about what you're doing here?
48 hours or less. Within 2 days, everything had already taken place. The ball must have started rolling immediately upon the appearance of that interview, because within 2 days, an official NYU committee, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Group, responded with an open letter denouncing me roundly. I mean, really,
wow.
Denunciation. This letter is the bane of my existence as far as I'm concerned. This official letter from an official NYU committee calling me guilty for the structure of my thought was really, to me, it still stands as it irks me to no end, and it really is the real cause of the major problem. And then at the same time, on the same day that appeared, I was put on a paid medical leave of absence. I was very strongly coerced into it.
So how did that work? You say strongly coerced. Like, was there a specific threat? They said you must go on this or else, or was it just strongly implied that?
Well, let's put it this way. I was called into the dean's office. It wasn't my idea. I didn't contact the dean and say, I think I'm going crazy. I need a leave of absence. Instead, he contacted me and said, I'd like to see you today, between your classes. So I went there and I said, of course I had very strong presentiment about what it was about, that it would be about the interview, the tweets, blah, blah, blah. And at the same time, I was still a little bit shocked that I was actually being called in for my views, which were a legitimate exercise of academic freedom. I mean, unlike the Georgetown professor who recently suggested that the male senatorial supporters of Kavanaugh should be killed, castrated, and have their genitals fed to pigs.
That seems like a perfectly reasonable thing for a university professor.
Who got no chastisement from the university, by the way. I was chastised for criticizing bias reporting hotlines, safe spaces, and trigger warnings. Okay? So, I mean, it's unbelievable, right? The disparity here, the double standard. But yeah, he calls me in, pulls me very close, and says, I just want you to know that this conversation has nothing to do with your Twitter account.
And did he say that with a straight face? I mean,
with a straight face, because he's a dean. Administrators are so good at administrative speak.
Right.
They can say anything that the complete Orwellian opposite of the truth, with the most utmost conviction.
He expects you to believe that by pure coincidence, he just up and decided, in no relation to this article that just revealed you as this anti-PC NYU professor, that you maybe are just a little stressed out and need some time off.
And then, yes, that's right. And then he said,
unreal.
And if you don't mind, the head of human resources is here. If you don't mind, I would like to have her join us. So here I am being called in now, 2 major administrators, right? And they suggest right away, he goes on to say, people are concerned about you because they think that this Twitter account, here we go.
So it has nothing to do with that, I thought. Wait a minute.
Which this conversation has nothing to do with, by the way, is a cry for help. Okay?
Oh, my God.
So they actually tried to construe it as a sign that I was losing my mind, because I must be crazy to differ with the social justice left in my department and the university at large. And I had a promotion that was on the table that had been pending since April of the same year. This was now October, and they still hadn't made decisions about it. And that was at stake. I felt a strong pressure, like, we really want you to do this, and so I agreed. But then after I left the meeting, I found out that they had written this open letter. I didn't know about the open letter before the meeting, and that just came out like almost at the same time that I was in the meeting. Apparently, it was published, and I was denounced, and I saw that the whole department and the whole administrative machinations that had gone on behind the scenes that basically moved in unison to condemn and dismiss me for a period of time. And then I got a call from the New York Post, and this was just 5 minutes after the meeting, and she says basically, I want you to know the Post is following your case. I'm like, what are you talking about? I didn't even know
what are they, the cops? What do you mean following your case? Is the FBI now?
and we were very supportive of your position. I said, oh, that's good. But what do you mean? She said, so we're very much supportive of your position, and we disdain the way that the university is treating you. And I didn't know how could she possibly know about how they were treating me unless she was in the room or had a bug on the wall during the meeting. Right. But she was referring to the open letter, which I hadn't known about. And then I really glanced, I read it over while we were talking, and I said, do you think there's any connection between all this? My Twitter account, the interview, the open letter, and the strongly encouraged leave of absence. And she almost broke out laughing, really.
I mean, it's laughable if it wasn't so serious.
Yeah, she said, you must be kidding. She said, I've been a reporter for 15 years. And I can tell when there's connection and causality, believe me, and there's no doubt about it in this case. They're putting you on leave to get rid of you. And I was like, oh my God. So I had no choice. I felt I had no choice but to go public now. Because if I didn't, I thought that, she's very suggestive of the idea that if I didn't go public, and I think she was possibly right, they would just bury me. I would be gone. And that would be it. I mean,
so do you have any kind of like tenure that protects your job, or are you?
Our program does not have tenure. We have rank, but we don't have tenure. So I was on contract basis,
right?
Still on contract basis. Long-term contracts that are endlessly renewable, but nevertheless, it's more contingent than tenure. That's for sure.
Sure, but they could push you out if they chose to force the issue
you for various reasons. And
right. So do you think it's your kind of your outspokenness now that they're hesitant to do that, because even if they might not like what you're saying, it kind of proves your point if they do?
Absolutely. I mean, the thing is, I've learned, and I think I would say this to anybody facing similar circumstances, whether they initiated them or not. You're much better off when you're visible than you are when you're quiet, and certainly when you're apologetic. If you're apologetic and quiet, you're just easily dismissed. But if you're public and in the public eye and have support and can get on the news and get on, various TV shows and things like that, yes, you have much greater chance of surviving, much greater. And just, there's a gentleman that in Canada that lost his job for making critiques of PC culture, and I don't think he approached it the right way. I think he got apologetic. He was too careful. He stopped. He started to curtail his views, things like that. And I think that's a mistake. You should become more emboldened, and actually, basically, like you say, you have to let them prove that you're right by dismissing it.
Hey guys, this is Roger Paxton, and if you're fed up with the government running every single aspect of your life, but you're not listening to the Lava Flow podcast yet, then what's wrong with you? Check us out at thelavaflow.com, or just go back to sucking up to the government. The Lava Flow podcast, striking the root every single episode.
This is Chris Spangle, and I am the host of We Are Libertarians, which you can find in iTunes, Google Play, or at wearelibertarians.com. We are a podcast that brings you all of the irreverence that modern politics deserves by examining current events from a libertarian perspective. So please, check us out at wearelibertarians.com.
Are those dry, boring, run-of-the-mill political talk shows putting you to sleep on your commute or at work? Are you ready for some fun?
Look no further. Blast Off with Johnny Rocket is a Seattle-based podcast expressing viewpoints of free markets, voluntary exchange, badass music, wicked banner, and of course, drinking.
The Blast Off doesn't shy from the truth, but always brings the party.
Let's rock and roll, Raylene.
Bring it on, Johnny.
You can check us out at thelaunchpadmedia.com/blastoff.
Again, that's thelaunchpadmedia.com/blastoff.
Launchpad Media. Always launching ideas in your direction.
I'm curious, Michael, at what point during all of this did your view of PC culture and your outspokenness on this, when did this start to lead to a broader change in your political views? Because, I mean, that's still a pretty big sweeping change, especially because you said even when you started doing this, you were still doing it from the point of view of the left. So how did this lead you to this deeper philosophical journey where you actually now call yourself a libertarian? I mean, that's a pretty big leap.
Yeah, it started that it wasn't just the academic world that assailed me. I was also facing at the same time a huge internet leftist backlash against me. I can't even tell you how many people. I mean, thousands, really. If I really count them, it's definitely into the thousands who denounced me. I had been a member of a loose organization called Insurgent Notes. It's a left communist group. And they basically conducted a sort of show trial in which they convicted me of various offenses online and through email. And I was like, forget it, I quit.
Convicted.
Yeah, because I went on Fox News. This was an indefensible move. The left should never do that. I criticized the left just as Trump was elected. All kinds of things like that. And they were so vicious, and not just them, but others, many others, just denouncing me, swearing at me, saying they would shoot me in the back of the head if they had their way. Things like that. I saw how, the left claims to be all about egalitarianism, but really at base, they're totalitarian, and I saw it very clearly. It was like there was a monster that had come out from behind, like a mat, like inside of the human being. There was actually some sort of a creature in there that burst forth and made itself known. It was like, it was like the revelation of the body snatchers. You know what I mean? It was that clear that I saw this is a monstrous contingent of people.
So did it start to seem to you that there was a connection between this backlash against you and, the sort of Marxist ideology that you previously held?
Absolutely. I saw that basically I was undergoing a very soft sort of purge. I was being purged from the ranks in a soft way through nothing but cyber attacks and verbal abuse. And, some of it was in person, but a lot of it was cyber attacks and verbal abuse. But it was like it was very emblematic of the whole movement. And it made me realize historically what had happened was very much in line with that. So that these people basically proved to me that, if they had the power, a person like me would be dispensed with. They would have just gotten rid of me. I was put in a metaphorical gulag, if you will.
It sounds like some of them might want to put you in a literal gulag.
Oh, they would love to. And I was, there were people that said to me, they said, if I had my way, you would be taken outside and shot in the head. And they're serious. If they had power, they would do this. They're amazing. There's no respect for human rights amongst Marxists. I mean,
well, it's not necessarily an if. We have several, a good amount of examples that is often what does occur when Marxists take power.
Yes, I mean they're just monstrous. And so first my rejection of Marxism came from the political aspect. I noted the totalitarianism of it all, and I saw that really you can't have Marxism, you can't have communism as such without force. And people have to, the dissent must be dispensed with some way. Plus, you have to enforce equality, whatever that is, right? Through, reducing others that maybe stand out in some way. They have to be diminished. They have to be squelched. They have to be crushed sometimes. So I started connecting it all, started doing a lot more reading, started reading into the history of, the Soviet Union and Maoism. And the Black Book of Communism I read numerous other accounts and started to see things that, literature that was totally occluded to me. I couldn't see it. It was as if it didn't exist. And it's very much the case for Marxists. Their reading diets are so channeled to a certain direction that they are unable even to imagine that there are other views. and they don't even see the critiques that are out there. They don't even occur to them, and they certainly don't read them. So I started to read a lot of this stuff, and then I got into a critique of the economic elements. I represent this a bit in the book. I mean, I'm not an expert in libertarian economics by any stretch, but after reading Mises and Hayek, I realized that, Marxists claim that the capitalism is anarchy. It is complete anarchy, and that, they call it the anarchy of the market, and that the only rational economy is the socialist planned economy. But I realized that that's actually the obverse of the truth. If anything, Marxism is utterly irrational because it depends upon the dictation of demand instead of the actual demand being represented in the pricing and in the marketplace. It has to be delegated to the masses vis-a-vis some sorts of committees, whether centralized or not. In any case, it is nothing like the economic democracy that is promised by Marxism. Marxism's main reason for being is its claim to economic justice, right? Economic justice means that people are, they're represented, that they have power, and they are not in some way utterly shut out from the ownership of the means of production and the distribution of goods, that they will collectively control this. Well, it turns out that this is not possible, and that the marketplace is the only means by which something like economic democracy can be realized, because without the pricing system of the market, you have no way to gauge demand for anything, and therefore it has to be dictated up from above, and therefore it's never rational. It's anything but rational. It's based purely on the proclivities of whoever's in charge. So all that became very clear to me.
I think it really speaks to your intellectual integrity and your quest for the truth, that once you saw a huge problem with this ideology, you didn't just stop there and say, okay, I reject that, move on. You dug into further, what is right. If this Marxist economics is wrong, well, something else must be right. And that actually led you down to a broader philosophical path, which I think is very, very commendable, that you didn't just, say, okay, well, I can still just, be kind of a leftist and I'll kind of have my views. They're unrelated to this anti-PC thing, because I know many people that are anti-PC, but that's as far as it goes. They might even still hold very progressive or what have you views. They don't necessarily make the kind of connections that you're making.
Yeah, I mean, I just have to. I'm a kind of a thorough thinker. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I must have a thorough, systematic understanding of things. I can't live in a piecemeal world. I have to make sense of things in a way that every piece fits and it all structured properly. So, whereas I had thought that the idea that the market was necessary for individual liberty, I believe that was just purely a capitalist ideology. That's what Marxists say about that. That's purely capitalists who say that you can't have freedom without the marketplace. That's total nonsense. And they say that only the capitalist has freedom. Everyone else is a slave. Well, I see it utterly differently now. I think that's completely wrong. And that now I do understand the connection between the market and freedom, individual liberty. It's intimately connected, because the market is the place where you get to bring your talents and do what you want in the world, and have self-determination as to what that is, and therefore exchange that in a marketplace of with others. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, not everybody there's no de facto equality economically, but that's not necessary.
Michael, why don't you tell us a little bit about your book before we let you go here? Springtime for Snowflakes, Social Justice and Its Postmodern Parentage. And I think we could probably really do a whole nother episode or a whole nother show, and maybe we will do something down the road simply on postmodernism, because it is a somewhat controversial topic in libertarianism. There are many libertarians that identify with it and think it is very libertarian in and of itself. And obviously there are those like yourself that feel the opposite. So I don't expect us to do a full treatise on that, but maybe dig into a little bit about what is the connection here between social justice and postmodernism.
Yeah, I mean, my main thesis in the book is that postmodernism is the parent of social justice ideology, and that the social justice creed, it bears all the birthmarks of postmodernism, of postmodern theory, and that is the relativism, the subjectivism, the idealism, the irrationality, the anti-empiricism, and on and on and on. Everything is very clearly connected to postmodern theory, and you can see this in some of the various sub-movements within social justice, like transgenderism, which I go into in some depth in the book. The idea that, one's gender is really based on belief rather than some sort of empirical facts in the world, things like that. And I connect all this to deconstruction. So deconstruction and post-structuralism and other elements. The postmodern theory is a very variegated realm of theory, and a lot of the pieces don't connect very well. They don't fit together necessarily. There's a lot of disparate things, but it's an umbrella term comic for a lot of different tendencies, if you will. So I show through my a tracing of my education in theory in the MA and the PhD programs that I attended, I show the connections between the postmodern theory and the social justice politics of today. That's basically what the book does, with a few swipes thrown at socialism and things like that. I couldn't resist that. I have a chapter basically I had to do it. But yeah, mostly it's a takedown of social justice, politics, and ideology, and postmodernism is implicated as its parent.
All right, well, we will certainly have a link to that book, Springtime for Snowflakes. That will be in today's show notes. Michael, your story is absolutely fascinating. I'm so glad you're able to come on. And again, maybe we'll have you back and do something about postmodernism. I've actually been kind of in my head kind of thinking about having a debate on this topic, because it has been talked about out there. So
I would love to have a debate if anybody you could find these libertarians that claim that it's libertarian. I can explain why it's not libertarian.
Well, there's a few out there, so I'll do some poking around and see what we can dig up. But in the meantime, I encourage everyone out there to check out Springtime for Snowflakes, Social Justice and its Modern Parentage. And if you have any Marxist friends out there, Michael is a good example of why you shouldn't necessarily give up on them.
Thanks, Mark.
Just continue to have those conversations with them, and if you be nice enough, maybe someday they will wake up as well.
Yes, but the left will take care of that, because they basically eat their own, and as long as you don't die, you might survive to change.
Well, it is amazing to see the extremism of one ideology actually push its own people into the arms of others, and in many times sometimes that's just the arms of Trump and the Republicans, but in many cases like yourselves, that is actually into the ideas of liberty and individual rights and all those wonderful things.
Absolutely.
Michael, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Woo-wee! I don't know about you guys, but that interview to me was just a doozy. What a fascinating journey of intellectual discovery for Dr. Michael Rectenwald. And he really did take a major career risk by coming out against campus culture, against the PC culture. And luckily, it didn't just turn into another alt-right rejection of PC. It really turned into an intellectual journey. And that's really what we're hoping to inspire here on Lions of Liberty. I don't expect to have my interviews give you all the answers in life. I really just hope people will hear something that causes them to go down their own intellectual journey and to start to think about things a little bit differently. And I think this interview with Dr. Michael Rectenwald is one you can really hopefully share around with friends that have a bit of a different idea on things, or maybe friends that agree with you on the anti-PC stuff, but they haven't really taken that full journey and haven't really thought about things deeper. I think Dr. Rectenwald's example here and his real integrity to really do a deep analysis of his own beliefs is really, really something to share with people. So I really do encourage you to share this interview, to share all our shows. I think there are just so many important stories being shared, especially with the work John is doing on Felony Friday, his last episode on Friday. I mean, if you missed that tale, you've got to go back and hear that one. I'm not even going to describe it for you. Let me just say it's one of the most inspiring, incredible stories I've ever heard back to the last edition of Felony Friday. So just click back in that podcast feed. That's why you got to hit the subscribe button to get all your episodes of Lions of Liberty, all the work work we're doing every week, of course. In addition to Felony Friday and this show, we got Brian sandwiched in the middle there with his weekly shot of comedy, culture, and liberty on Electric Liberty Land. And as of now, at least through the end of this month, we'll be giving you Candidates of Liberty on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're a 5-day-a-week show right now, completely for free. But if you don't want it to be for free, if you want to pay us money, you can, of course, do that as well on Patreon, patreon.com/Lions of Liberty, where we bring you even more content, if you can believe that. The Degenerate Gambler Show, if you are not catching the stories on Degenerate Gamblers, if you really want to get to know us better, it's maybe 2% about gambling and 98% about the ridiculous stories that we have faced in our college lives and our current lives. So I really do highly recommend checking that out. That's Brian, Odie, and Rico are regulars on that one. You really got to dig into this bonus content to really get to know the real Lions behind the scenes. But for as little as $5 a month, you can join the Pride. Of course, there are higher levels where you can get all sorts of perks like free t-shirts. At some level, you can even get an advertisement on this very show at the $100 a month level, which is really a steal. So please do check all of that out. And until next time, folks, live long and live free.